What's up, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the awesome King Kong 90 GT, and this was sent to me courtesy of gearbest.com. Really like this micro FPV flyer. It is super durable. Let's get into the review and give you the 411 on the 90 GT. So here it is, the King Kong 90 GT, and as you can see, mine's beat up. It's got a bunch of grass clippings all over it, and camera is kind of tilted up a little bit. And I've actually replaced this camera because I had a nasty crash where I crashed camera first right into the concrete, but I'll get into that in a second. I am just a huge fan of this little micro flyer. I've been flying this one around basically since March, so I've got a lot of stick time in on this particular quad, and I've done angle mode, I've done horizon, I've done a lot of acro with this, and whatever you want to do with this quad, it's gonna do it. Has tons of power, done some punch outs, line of sight. I did not fly this one line of sight too much, but I did a few punch outs just to show you guys what it looks like, and kind of tough to see because this one is so small, but the punch outs on this one are super fast for such a small quad. It's got these tiny little 1103 7800 kV King Kong branded motors on it, and they give it a lot of power, give it plenty of power to do some acro, and you could definitely race this one around if you wanted to. Just pretty versatile quad. It can do some freestyle, it can do some racing, and I really think this is a nice value. It comes in around 130 bucks, and obviously that's just for the quad, and it comes with a nice little case here, and it has some spare parts. It's got some prop guards, it's got some extra rubber bands to attach your battery, and it comes with some extra screws, and it comes with a spare set of props, and just this case is really nice to carry it around in, but a little bit difficult to fit it in the case with the props on, so that's a little bit of a con with this particular case. But if you don't have all the boxes in there, you can put it in there and it fits really nice. So there really is a lot to like about this particular quad, but I want to go over what I didn't like about it first. First off, I want to talk about the camera. And the camera, not exactly sure of how many TVL lines it is, but it is a little bit lower quality. Some of the other FPV cameras I've flown, definitely higher quality than this one, and these are even the $20 AIO cameras you get on Amazon. I feel like you get a better picture out of the quad than you do out of this particular one. This one has kind of the all-in-one system here with the camera and the VTX and the antenna sticking out the back here, and I have some shrink tube on here to kind of hold it in place, and a zip tie, because this is actually my second camera system. I had the nose down crash right into the camera lens, and I broke the camera lens straight off, so I elected to just buy the whole system instead of like a lens or something like that, and it's only about 20 bucks to replace. And before I had done that, I actually had broken off the antenna here, and I was still getting an okay reception out of it, but obviously you're gonna get a better one with the full dipole antenna here. So a little bit of a weak point right here, and it can get chewed up in your props and things like that, so you definitely want to make sure you secure that. Other cons with this camera, other than the overall picture quality, is the FPV reception. The FPV reception is not always great, and to be fair, this does have multiple channels. It comes with this nice little printout here, so it is a 16 channel 25 milliwatt micro VTX. So it is a 16 channel receiver, and it has a nice little color coordinated chart here, and the way the VTX works is, I probably should fire this up, but it's not that big a deal. Whatever your channel you're on, the LEDs are gonna flash these colors. So there's like green and red, or purple and red, or white and red, depending on whatever channel you're on. And I didn't do a whole lot of channel exploring, so to be fair, maybe you get a much better reception on some of the other channels. So I found one that my goggles just actually happened to be on, so I just kind of stuck with it and flew it, and I kind of did all my flying with it. But this is the channel that I usually fly on, and So
So my other quads don't really have any issues with reception with this particular channel in my area, so I'm not exactly sure why this one would. Be that as it may, I'd say the weakest part of this quad is the camera, the quality of the camera, and the FPV reception. It's not terrible, but I've definitely had better reception and better signals with other quads. Also, initially when I got this quad, the receiver was kind of sticky taped to the bottom. I'm not sure if they intended it to stay there or not, but I kind of left it there and the battery fits in over it, and I didn't really have too many problems with receptions. I had a few dropouts here and there, but then towards the end of the other receiver's life here, I think it got beat up over time, and then eventually it stopped working. So I would get these little dropouts here and there, but for a while it was rock solid. I didn't have any sort of connection issues whatsoever with this quad. So it wasn't a problem until it became a problem, and then when it became a problem, it was pretty fast where it just didn't work anymore. So I elected to buy another one of these because I kind of liked it. It's real small, easy to install, and I got decent range out of it, so I don't really have any complaints in that department. And the other thing is, when you crash this quad, it does not have any sort of beeper or buzzer or anything like that, so it is somewhat difficult to find if you crash it in the tall grass, or if you crash it far away from yourself and you're not exactly sure where it went. So a slight con with no buzzer on this, but really it's not that big a deal. I did have one crash where I hit kind of up in this area right above the camera, and it kind of broke off some of my screws. So I just kind of went to the hardware store and got some replacement screws. So maybe not the best solution, but I wanted to get it back in the air. So let's get to what I like about the quad. And there's a lot to like about this one. Let's start right off the top with binding and the binding process. Binding it to the QX7 here was extremely simple. Once you pop your battery in, it's gonna go into bind mode automatically with this particular receiver. You just put your Tyrannus in D8 mode and put it in bind mode, and it'll bind up real easy. I didn't have any problems with that, and then it comes loaded with a current version of Betaflight. I'm not exactly sure the exact version, but I didn't have any problems with firmware or anything like that. I was able to program in angle, horizon, and acro mode. Actually, it might have actually come already pre-programmed with that. I'm not 100% sure on that. So that stuff was all easy. The only thing that might slip some of you up is I did have to calibrate the ESCs on there, and that's a fairly simple process. I'm not gonna show you guys how to do that. There's plenty of videos online on how to do that. I definitely like the look of the quad too. Maybe not the all-in-one VTX here. I kind of wish that was protected a little bit better. It does have some sort of like shrink wrap or something like that around it. So it is fairly protected, but it is kind of just hanging out here. Plus your receiver. It is a really compact build, so I kind of understand why they cut it on top here, but it would have been kind of nice maybe to make it just slightly wider up top and put it under the carbon fiber or something like that. And as far as battery lead goes, it has kind of like this balance plug that is a little bit of an odd plug to choose. You might want to, a lot of other quads use like a JST or a XT30 or something like that, but I didn't have any problems with it. And obviously most batteries are going to have a balance lead, so you're not going to have any issues there. You probably got a lot of batteries lying around that are going to work with it. It did come with, I think, a 300 or 350 milliamp hour battery. So here's the battery. It is a 350 milliamp hour battery. It has the JST connector with it and also the balance plug, and the balance plug just plugs right into the quad. And I kind of strapped down the JST underneath the rubber band, and that's how it secures. Didn't have any issues. I had the battery pop out maybe a few times in some major crashes, but for the most part it stayed put. So let's talk about the flight experience with the King Kong 90 GT here. I really liked it, and I liked flying it in angle mode, and then I got it into horizon, and then eventually into acro. And this is a pretty good one to learn acro on because the rates on it are dialed down a little bit, and it's easy to fly. It doesn't roll super fast. It can get moving quite quick in acro, so be aware of that if you're gonna fly this one in acro. But it is pretty durable. I didn't have any problems with the frame. I did break one motor when I was trying to dive a tree, and I thought I was gonna clear it, and crashed right over concrete, and it came right down on one of the motors, and the bell of the motor kind of came apart, and I spent a good, I don't know, half hour looking for it, could not find it anywhere, and was able to easily find replacement motors. so no big issue there. It was a super easy change out too. Props, initially I hated these props. They broke on me very easily, any sort of minor crash, and they would break. But I think that was more of me not being so great at flying this particular quad and flying this particular quad in acro. So these are King Kong branded props, and they will break fairly easy, but they are pretty well balanced and they're not too bad. They give you a good flight experience. I did switch over to, I can't remember exactly who makes these props, but I switched over to these. These are notoriously not balanced very well, and they give you a lot of oscillation and vibrations in your video. But if you're just starting out, they're pretty good because they're extremely durable and they're hard to break. I think I only broke a couple of these until I switched back over to the stock props. So I'll have these linked in the description where you can pick them up if you want to check them out. They are much more durable than the stock props, but they're not very well balanced. So it's kind of like a trade-off. You're not going to break as many of them, but you're not going to have the best flight experience with them. Once I was confident, I was flying this around in acro exclusively, and I really enjoyed doing it, was able to do some freestyle, and I'm definitely, admittedly, not the best freestyle pilot, and I'm definitely still learning freestyle and acro in general, but having a ton of fun with this particular quad, and this quad will do a lot of the moves you can do with a larger quad, with the 5-inch quads. You can do it on this one, maybe not quite as smooth, and another thing is I'm not the best at tuning quads, so that's another thing I'm gonna have to learn eventually, and this quad could probably use a good tuning, but I'm definitely no expert on that. So keep that in mind. Some of the moves I try to pull off, there's a lot of oscillations, and I get into my prop wash and stuff like that. Some of that is just me not being the best pilot, and other parts of it is this one could probably be tuned a little bit better, but I don't know a whole lot about that myself. So gonna be getting into that soon, hopefully. I mentioned earlier it does have a lot of power. I flew this on one day where it was extremely windy, and you can probably see in the video there's a lot of flags blowing in the background there, and the wind was extreme that day, and I was thinking to myself, I probably shouldn't be flying today. This is when accidents happen, but I really wanted to fly. I really fell in love with flying FPV acro with this quad, so I tried to do it as much as I could, and it was a fairly nice day other than the extreme wind, so I gave it a go, and this one performed pretty well in the wind. You definitely see the vibrations in the video, and it wasn't the best FPV experience, but it was still a lot of fun, and this one could handle the wind. Flight times are going to vary depending on how hard you're flying, but I would say around 2.5 to 3 minutes is pretty safe. You're not going to wreck your battery around there. You could probably squeeze out longer if you're just kind of cruising around, or depending on the size of the battery you're using, but with my 350 milliamp hour batteries that I have, I was getting around 2.5 to 3 minutes, and it's a very satisfying flight time. I'd say you pretty much can't go wrong with the 90 GT here. You're definitely going to want to get some extra props if you do pick this one up. I have broken like a ton of props. I got these crazy pony ones. These are the ones same as this. They're not real well balanced, but they are pretty durable. But the King Kong ones will break pretty easily. So if you're going to be flying this, definitely pick up some extra props. So to sum it up, I would say if you're interested in the 90 GT here, you're definitely not going to be disappointed. I would say pull the trigger on it. It's about 130 bucks, and you're going to need a transmitter, you're going to need some extra batteries, you're going to need a bunch of props, and probably a hobby grade charger also would do you well. But other than that, I think it's a good investment. Oh, and you're obviously going to need your FPV goggles. It's kind of geared more toward people who already have the transmitter, the goggles, and the charger, and the batteries, and things like that. But it is also an excellent way to get into FPV. It's kind of versatile. It's fairly easy to fly for someone just getting into FPV. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to someone just starting quads, although you probably could. This could be your first quad if you really wanted to. But I would recommend this more towards the person who is just getting into FPV and maybe a little intimidated flying a 5-inch or something like that. Pick this guy up and you're gonna learn acro, and you're not gonna break your bank breaking a bunch of motors and
ESCs and whatnot. So I think that's it with the 90 GT here. If you have any questions about it, or if I didn't answer anything, hit me up in the comments below. And just say hi if you don't have any questions or anything like that. Give me some feedback on the video. And I'm gonna leave you guys with some flying here. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.